Okay, if everybody could take their seats for the second session. Really happy to say that we're going to be talking some sport now, some sports journalism. The legend that is Guy Mowbray, ladies and gentlemen. Guy, first of all, thanks so much for coming and spending some time with us. It's been a busy weekend for you. If we start with that, because you've had a couple of days in your car going to Newcastle and then down to Luton, and a couple of rather interesting games for you.
Newcastle was interesting. Saturday. Yeah, I'm sure everybody's got their own opinions on that and everything that happened. Quite a few processes to sort out. The brain has to work quite quickly when that's happening. And then, you have 3.5 hours in the car down on the M1 to Luton and then back again yesterday. And that was great. That had its own stories as well. It was a lovely story at the end, actually. It was a great story anyway, Luton winning. That was going to be amazing. And then just had my line ready for full time. Here we go. And then Luis Diaz pops up and you've got a whole different story. So your brain's got to kick into gear again. So, it was good fun. Been a good weekend. Yeah,
great weekend. We're obviously going to open up to a lot of questions that I think you guys are going to have. But first of all, and we've sort of chatted a little bit before we've started about how you started yourself in football commentary. And it was a different route, I suppose, because you didn't start as these guys have, sort of studying media and journalism.
No, those courses didn't exist in 1990. Don't think they did anyway. I was studying business at University of Bradford. Feel free to boo. We had a damn good football team, by the way. We used to stuff Leeds all the time. We had a very good football team I was proud to be a part of. But I took a year out in 1991 after my first year, and I'm still on it. I never went back because I got into doing what I'm doing now. It was a throwaway conversation with my father, actually, who was a sports coach, and he was a PE teacher, and he finally told me I wasn't good enough to play football, which I think I knew, but was dismissing from the back of my mind. And he suggested you can get paid for watching it. And that was kind of the light bulb moment that went on. So that's how it started for me. And then for the first 3-4 years, pretty much, till I was 21, 22, 23, it might have been actually, I kind of did it for nothing. It was a weekend hobby job, bit of expenses, and then gradually, miles on the clock, you get your name known, people ask you to do a bit more for them, you end up working for various other people. A bit of pocket money comes in, and then, if you're lucky, a full-time job will appear. And that's it. There's no right or wrong road into what we're doing. It's miles on the clock experience, and the big one for all of us is knowing what you're doing. That's the key.
Yeah, and I suppose, we're going to come on to sort of like your preparation and what you do ahead of a game. But and I think there's a fair few students here that are doing what you started doing. You initially started in Club Call, and I think there's a fair few of them here doing sort of like Team Talk and working for that same company that you were starting out with.
Yeah, I was at Club Call, which, for those of you maybe aren't familiar with it, that was the old premium rate telephone, pre-internet. Premium rate telephone line service. Every football league club and some beyond had their own Club Call service. Percentage of the money raised went back to the club, and they'd do news in the week from the club, commentaries on a match day. I think famously the most lucrative club call was Watford, because Elton John from his base in Los Angeles used to be on the phone for 2 hours listening to the commentary on a Saturday afternoon. So Watford used to make quite a bit of money through their club call, through their own chairman as he was at the time. I did a bit of Leeds United club call, bit of York City, bit of Hull City, reports, commentaries on a weekend, and then a bit of local radio as a knock-on effect from there. And then Team Talk, which were based then in the centre of Leeds in the old William Hill building, just off the Head Row. My first full-time job was at Team Talk, which was a sort of an independent club call. I mean, I don't know how Team Talk works these days. It's a little bit different now with the internet, but then it was a premium rate telephone service, and we used to have to come up with 4 stories for each team that you were covering every day. But we were independent, so we could be a little bit creative. 2 or 3 stories would be sort of official. We'd find out from the club that this was official, but it wasn't official news. So the 4th story, we could be a bit speculative with transfer news and things like that. I nearly got my best mate to move to Sheffield Wednesday from York City. Very, very nearly, because I was a little bit creative. I needed a 4th story for Sheffield Wednesday Team Talk. So I said they were interested in York City right back Andy McMillan, who happens to be my best friend. And they took him on trial. And I later, when I started working for ITV, was working with David Pleat, who was the Sheffield Wednesday manager at the time, And he confessed, he saw this name linked with his club and thought they'd better have a look at him. And he went over there for 2 weeks, and they decided, leave him at York, he's no better than what we've got, but we'll keep monitoring him. And anyway, it nearly worked. But yeah, we used to do a bit of that occasionally. It's a bit naughty, really, but it nearly worked. We nearly made his career.
Would you have got 20%?
No, I wouldn't. No, I definitely wouldn't. He still won't buy me a beer. But,
So sort of like club call, and then you mentioned there radio, and that was obviously sort of like the main in for you really into broadcasting, wasn't it?
yeah, I through local radio, independent local radio mainly, and then a bit of BBC local radio. I covered rugby league for Radio York, Radio Leeds, a little bit of football every now and again. And then from there, I got my first full-time job, Minster FM, which is now part of the Greatest Hits rubbish. Don't listen to that crap. God, it's awful. It's all part of that now. So, but Minster FM it was the first independent radio station in York, and they decided they wanted a sports department. So, through doing club call, again, it's all networking, it's all people you meet, and always be nice to people. You never know where it might lead. I started. They basically asked me to cover a couple of games for them, and from there, their head of whatever he was. Interesting chap, actually. A chap called John Darch, who's now the bloke behind all the safe standing you see all around Europe. A big Bristol City and Union Berlin fan, and England Supporters Club president, I think, as well. And he does all these things. He was head of Minster FM, and he got me in to basically be their sports department, which involved covering York games, covering a bit of York rugby, racing, and doing the breakfast show Monday to Friday, which I did for 2.5 years, which was bizarre. It was great fun, actually, really good fun. And it is, one thing leads to another. If you've got a bit about you, one thing will lead to another, and that's kind of what it did. From there, I went to Metro Radio in Newcastle, covering Sunderland games, and things just started to happen from there, and then on.
Was sort of like TV commentary always sort of like the goal for you?
I've never had a goal.
Right, okay.
It's just things have happened, a series of happy accidents. I've always been happy doing what I'm doing, and then something else has come along, and I thought, why not? Let's have a go at that. I never really, because I got into this job by accident. You know, people say, who are your heroes? And I hear some of my colleagues, and that's fine, that their heroes are the likes of John Motson and Peter Jones and Barry Davis and Brian Butler and these greats of broadcasting, who obviously I've grown up listening to and admired and respected, but my heroes were players. I didn't have, my all-time sporting heroes, Ian Botham, still. My heroes weren't broadcasters. It wasn't like that for me. It's all been sort of by accident. And yeah, so I never really had maybe I did in the back of my mind subconsciously. But it wasn't something I was working towards. And I was at Metro. Funnily enough, before I started at Metro, I got the job as sports editor at Metro Radio in 1997. And I'd just basically almost been made redundant by Minster at the time. They were changing their dynamic. They wanted me to do more news. I had no interest in doing news. There's a couple of funny stories from the days covering news about making things up. I was a dreadful news journalist. York floods every year. So they used to send me out to cover the floods, and I was like, it's not even a story, we're used to it. We grow up here, nobody's bothered. So I went to my mate's pub by the river, sat and had a coffee upstairs. River's a bit high, isn't it, Sean? Yeah. Do you want a beer? Yeah, I'll have a beer. Yeah, it's 11 o'clock, and we'll have a beer. I've got to go live into the news, though, at 11. We'll just make it up. So I said I'm at Clifton Bridge in the centre of York. It's like a scene from the Florida Everglades. There's just water everywhere. There are boats where cars should be. It was all made up. I was sitting in his pub. I couldn't see the river from where I was. The head of calendar news at Yorkshire Television rung me the next day. They were one of the parent companies of Minster Radio and gave me a commendation and wanted me to work for them. It was very, very bad practice, and I don't recommend it for anybody. But I just didn't have much interest in it, unfortunately. But yeah, that's where were we? What were we talking about?
Getting into TV.
Oh, getting into
commentary.
TV. Yeah. While when I'd actually written a few letters, very naively, not realising you need to have experience, etc. I wrote to Sky Sports, which was then a relatively new company, Eurosport, BBC Sport, ITV, everybody. Again, sort of pre-standard, everybody having email. And I waited a while for a response, never got one. And then literally the day I was starting at Metro, Eurosport got in touch and offered me some shifts. They'd heard me and said, come down to Paris and do a few And so I spent 2.5 years basically shuttling between York, Gateshead, Sunderland and Paris. Managed to renegotiate my deal with Metro so that they would give me the time to do it. And it's the busiest I've ever been and the most fun I've ever had. The late 90s, 96 to 99, were just, they were a whirlwind, but an absolute blast. I mean, it really was great fun. The World Cup happened in France at the same time in 98. Miraculously, I don't know how they made me their lead commentator for it. I was 26 years old. I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest, but somehow managed to fudge it and bluff it and did the final, which was unbelievable. And then from there, again, a series of happy accidents. A lot of this is, by the way. A lot of it is. My one bit of advice to anybody starting out in anything is just, for the first few years, and actually ongoing, because I'm still like this now, never ever say no. If somebody says, we want you to do so, just say yes and work out how you're going to do it afterwards. Because if you don't say yes, somebody else will. And if they do it well, that door's shut, and it might be shut forever. So I did that, and I learned that from my first ever club call shift. 1993, October 1993, York City 0, Brentford 2. They're in different divisions now. I was just watching my mates play, basically. That's what I was doing. I shadowed a guy who still reports for Sky now, John Temple. He'd rung me the night before the game and said, I've got to do a bit more elsewhere, so I need somebody to cover York, Leeds, Hull. Are you up for it? I've seen your letter. You know, you seem to have all the credentials, but if you come and shadow me for a couple of weeks. And my response, I'm really sorry, John, thank you for the call. I've got tickets from my mates for Man City v Liverpool tomorrow at Main Road, so I'm sorry, I can't. Oh, well, never mind, that's a shame. Oh, well, okay, bye. Went back into the living room, and again, I'm indebted to my late father, because I won't tell you the exact language he used, but he basically, get back on that phone now and say you're going. I went, well, I can't. It's cost me whatever it was, 15 quid, this ticket for Man City Liverpool. And he just said, and I didn't have his number either. This was before 1471. So I couldn't even find, luckily, the telephone directory, his number was in it. I found his number, rung him back. Sorry, John, bit of a misunderstanding there. Of course, I'd be delighted to come to you tomorrow. 2 weeks later, I'm there covering games on my own. And if I'd said no and gone to watch Man City lose to Liverpool, I probably wouldn't be here now. So there you go.
Yeah.
Never
Happy
say
accidents.
no. Don't say no.
Yeah. No, I think we always say that to anybody that's starting out is, accept every opportunity that comes your way. The difference between sort of like radio and then TV commentary, did that sort of like just come naturally for you? Because there is a difference.
Oh, massive. Two totally different jobs. I think I was very fortunate in doing, while I was doing Metro and also working on Eurosport, that Tuesday to Thursday I'd be doing television, and then on a Saturday it would be pure radio commentary and presentation as well, so I had to front the show as well. And so there was a lot of, again, it was just gaining experience all the while. And I had to actually think, what am I on today? And adapt accordingly. I find radio a lot easier, personally, and a lot more fun, actually. You've got a bit more license. Again, I sound like a real fraud here. You can make a bit up because people can't see. So, it doesn't matter if you misidentify a player every now and again. Don't worry about it. You can cover yourself. You can put a bit more personality in. You are people's friend. That's what you are. They can't see the game, so you are providing a service. It's descriptive. It's a lot more fun, I find. I don't do a lot of radio at the moment because I've just not got time to do it. Television is a harder art. You're not saying as much. You certainly shouldn't say as much. Some do. I try not to. When you then do say something, it's got to be adding something. It can't be banal. It can't be pointless. A lot of it is, I know. But you've got to really think. It taxes the brain, I think, a lot more. And as a result, I say radio's more fun, and it is. I find TV more fulfilling if you get it right. And one day I will get one right. Because you'll never do the perfect TV commentary. It doesn't exist.
Do you look back over your commentaries? Do you sort of like have your own snoops on yourself? And
I don't know anybody who does this job who isn't their own worst critic. And that's healthy, I think. It's sometimes a little bit veering towards obsessive. I had a friend who sadly passed away at the end of May. He was a floor manager for the BBC, and he's the best I've ever worked with because he was insane, quite honestly. But he was great company when we went away and holidays. There we go. We used to call it our holidays going to the World Cup. Because although it's the hardest you'll ever work, it's the most fun we ever had. So that's how we viewed it. And he used to challenge me. He used to go, right, today's the day, perfect commentary. And about 10 minutes in, I'd look across and he'd be like this. I think, what have I done? I haven't done anything wrong. He goes, you stuttered over that word a minute ago. Oh, for goodness sake. But and you do beat yourself up. You really do. You come off it and you only remember the things you've got slightly wrong. You only ever remember that. And people say that was great, and you don't feel, I never feel good after any commentary I've done. It takes a day, and then you might think, well, actually, you know what, yeah, it was all right. But I want that to continue because I think there's always something to aim for. You've got to, I don't know, you never want to be accused of phoning it in and just doing it and going home. It's always searching for something a little bit better. People come up to me, and I know a lot of people remember it as the Martin Tyler moment in 2012 when Manchester City won the league with the last kick of the season. My commentary was all right that day. I mean, I was sitting 5 metres away from him. We more or less said the same things, to be honest. I'll concede, I think his was a bit better. Mine, I don't know, I cringe when I hear it still. And it's only in the last couple of years they've stopped using it on the titles for Match of the Day, but all I did was scream. It wasn't great. It really wasn't great. It was of the moment, which is what commentary is, but I'm not proud of it. It wasn't great. I've done better ones.
So if there is one that you think, and you've come off and you think, I absolutely nailed that.
I think the closest I've ever come would be last December, the World Cup final, which was great. And the game takes care of itself. I more or less got that right, and I felt quite happy. I watched it back for the first time just the other week, and I more or less got that right. There's a few things I'd rather have said that, but I'd rather have done that. I actually I messed up the potentially perfect one right at the end because I invented a word. The Qatari authorities presented Lionel Messi, we didn't know this was happening, with some sort of traditional cloak at the end. They wrapped it round him, and I said, only fitting that the king of world football should be coronated. Coronated? It's crowned. There's no such bloody word as coronated. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, that ruined it. And that's all I could think of that night. Luckily, I had a few beers with Pablo Zabaleta, and that cured everything. He was very happy, understandably. He was working for the BBC, so that was great. But yeah, that's as close as I've come. I was just saying to Darren earlier, actually, when these end-of-season awards are handed out and it's Commentator of the Year and things, they go to somebody who's done that sort of game, which is fair enough because you've got more pressure on you, there's more people watching, there's more attention to what you're saying. But a 3-3 and a 4-3 and a 5-4, any one of us can do, and do it to a decent standard. Commentary of the Year should go to somebody who's watched a god-awful 0-0 draw, kept people engaged and interested, and kept the audience. That's when you work, and that's when I find it more fulfilling, bizarrely. When you know what, I've done all right there. That stunk the place out, and I think by a mixture of telling the truth, taking the piss, having a laugh, kept people engaged. And that's kind of part of the job. Just we forget sometimes. I think we forget, and some of my colleagues certainly do, and I would call them out to it face to face, so I'm not being hypocritical, I have done. I think some of them forget they're not there for them, they're there for the viewers and the listeners. There's a big thing at the moment, pronunciation. And some of my colleagues are ridiculous about it. I mean, really ridiculous. It's not actually the most important thing, believe it or not. We've got people who, you say it like this in the native tongue. But I'm not speaking in the native tongue. I'm speaking in English to a largely English-speaking and listening audience. If I start throwing a word in a different language in, A, I don't speak that language proficiently, so I won't get it right anyway. And B, it just sounds odd. It sounds pretentious. And I'll tell you a story about that, actually. When I was at Metro Radio, we used to have a phone in, and there was a guy playing for Sunderland. This was actually just after I'd finished. It was the year after I'd finished at Metro. But I was there on the day of the game and listening to it on the way home. And at Metro, we were famously cheap. We didn't have a dump button if somebody swore, so we just relied on, please don't, please don't, please don't. We're just going to have to apologise. And if you will forgive my language just for a second, because it still sums up pronunciation to me. Think about who your audience is and who you're broadcasting to. They had a French guy for a season called Eric Roy, R-O-Y. So in French, Eric Roy. So the commentator at the time, I'll spare his name, but he's a good lad anyway, but through the commentaries, called him Eric Waugh. And they had a caller who used to call us, actually, old Frank from Bolden. And he rung up, and he didn't go to the game, but he listened to all the games. And he said, the French lad was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I think we should keep him and all this. And he said, oh, you mean Eric Waugh? And he goes, that's another thing. It's Eric fucking Roy, man. Oh, sorry about that. Oh. And you just know who's listening. Know who you're broadcasting to. And it's not about you. It's not about you being clever. Be as right as you can, absolutely. Be respectful. Be as close to it as possible. But I have a simple rule. I kind of anglicize as much as I can whilst keeping the authenticity. And so if we don't have the Spanish sound, we don't have the Dutch guttural ch. So I don't try because it sounds silly, actually, to me, anyway. But
Yeah, you don't want to sound like Steve McLaren.
Steve. The Cones man.
Talking about that and about the preparation before, sort of like say this weekend and before Newcastle and then Luton, how much preparation do you do ahead of a game?
Too much.
Right. Well, I suppose, there's stuff there that you're not going to use, but you obviously over-prepare just in case.
It is a non-stop job. It is. I liken it to painting the Forth Bridge, that famous story. Once they're finished at one end, they've got to start again. You never actually end doing your preparation, and it is key to everything. It gives you a confidence. You won't use, if it's a good game, you won't use most of it, but it's there, and it can give you something to go to if it is a dull game, if it's not inspiring. I never see a dull game because I've always got something that I can find interesting and dig into, and try and keep it going. But it never ends. I think it's in my contract actually with the BBC, I must remain cognizant of all football developments, i.e. any local radio station could call me and say, we need you to talk about this, and I've kind of got to know what I'm talking about. And it doesn't feel like a job, it's just something you do. If it starts to feel like a job, you probably shouldn't be doing it. That's what I would say. It doesn't feel like one. You just do it. I keep all my stats. Haven't updated yesterday's games yet. Must do that this afternoon. And you just update as you go along. So I've got my schedule now till end of December, start of Jan. Those games are kind of prepped. As soon as I get one, I'm on it, and then I'll just fill in the gaps over time as we get towards it. And then the day before is always a cramming day to get the last bits in and get the manager quotes and see what they're saying. That helps with interviews after the game. I can refer back to something they said in the week. And the more you've done, just the more confident you feel to talk about it. You know you're clued up. You know you're not going to miss anything. It is the essential part of it. It's the part people don't see. It's the part HMRC don't understand when they try to tell you you're an employee and you work so many hours a week. Actually, I think you'll find I work every hour of every day. Try and quantify that one. But it's fun, and it is fun. It is.
On a technical level as well, just are you sort of still old school when it's pen and paper, or do you?
No,
what technology do you use?
It's all. And I'm working at the moment with European Week next week. It's 5 games, 5 commentaries a week. So I'm also a slight perfectionist. If I'm writing it out and I make a mistake, I'd have to start again. Crossing it out wouldn't work. I can't be looking at that when I've looked down at my notes and I see, even if I see a spelling mistake with my typing, I'm like, I noticed one yesterday. I'd missed a T out of Hattrick. It said Harrick. I can't look at that. It's horrible. So no, it's all done. I have basically a Word document for the. I should have done it, and I meant to do it yesterday. Darren asked me to, and I forgot because I was at Luton and I was fed up with the M1 by the time I got there. So I forgot to do it. But yeah, I have so many notes in front of me. I probably won't look at them during the course of a game that much, but just the act of doing them, it's all gone in. You look down for a trigger every now and again. I have notes on every single player in the squad that might be playing, that isn't playing, that's injured, that's out on loan, just in case I need to refer. It's exhaustive. There's a lot of it. I do my own as well. There's a lot of, the BBC don't do this because they can't do it. They do for big live cup ties and things, but a lot of companies will give the commentator and presenter a stat pack with everything in it, and they have departments. I've always done my own. I'll only use that as a check to see if there's anything I might have missed or something to double check that I've got it right. But I think it's better doing your own prep, and then you've only got yourself to blame, and you're just more on it. If somebody sends you a pack, you might read it, but you won't take it in. By actually finding that information out yourself, you will take it in a lot more. You've dug it out yourself. And you'll find a few more that others might miss. Don't forget, they're not delivering the commentary, so they might not be as quite attentive to the detail because it's not on them. They've done their bit. They don't have to find everything. Whereas I think I'm delivering it. I might find a nugget somewhere that I can use. And then everybody else will go, well, that wasn't very interesting, was it? And I think, well, I thought it was. There we are.
And you've commentated all over the world now. And obviously, I think you were the youngest commentator at a World
allegedly.
Cup.
Nobody can prove that. Nobody can prove that.
Wikipedia says you are.
Wikipedia says so. Yeah.
But of all, I mean, what's it like commentating at a World Cup? Because obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of sports journalists here. That's the dream, is to be at a World Cup, work in a World Cup at some possibility. What's that experience like?
Wikipedia also says I play cricket for Bishopthorpe's second team. It's outrageous. I've been in the first team for 6 years. Although we're now folding because we haven't got enough players. That's why I've been in the first team. The World Cup is my favourite thing in the world ever. It's just my favourite thing. It was as a kid growing up, and it is the best job. And as I alluded to earlier, it's the most fun I have ever, and the hardest work I ever do. Yeah, I've got so many good stories and experiences and life experiences and game experiences from going to World Cups. I've been to every one since '98, so France, Japan, South Korea, Germany, South Africa, Brazil, Russia, Qatar, European Championships in between. You don't see any of these countries, by the way. You see football stadiums and rubbish hotels and train stations and airports. And actually Matt, R.I.P. Matt, had a rule that we didn't sightsee, because even though we said it was our holiday, we're not actually on holiday. So he had a rule. He said, if I'm going to sightsee, I want my family with me, not you. So we weren't allowed to. And Brazil 2014, and we were there 2013 actually for the Confederations Cup. It's one of the wonders of the world, standing above Rio. We want to go up it. A load of people were doing it on their days off. They were getting up at 6 in the morning and getting the cable car and going up. Matt wasn't having it. We weren't allowed to. And then the week of the final in 2014, we'd spent about 3 weeks of our life in Rio over 2 years. And we can't be here and not go up one of the wonders of the world. And he rang me up. He said, where are you? I said, I'm just having a walk. And he said, well, come down. I'm at that bar we were in, just seafront. So I went down to Copacabana Beach. We're sitting outside this bar. He's got me a beer in. He went, what's that? I went, it's Christ the Redeemer statue. He went, yeah, see it, can't we? We're up there, can't see it anymore. Have a beer and shut up. so there's not a lot of that. So you don't see a lot of it, I must be honest. But it's just brilliant. The camaraderie, you live and breathe it. For 5-6 weeks, that's all it is. And I mean, the Euros have just come to this country, haven't they, for, when is it, 2028? Yeah. Oh, no, can't be 2028. Is it? Oh, I've lost track of where we are. Oh, it is, yeah, it will be. I don't want it here. That's selfish, it's very selfish, but I don't want it here because I can't think of anything worse than doing a game at, say, I don't know, Old Trafford. I don't think that'll be used, but it's falling down. So the song goes anyway. Doing a game at Old Trafford and loving it, and you're buzzing, and then you go home, and your missus at home, and she says, where have you been? You go, well, I've been through. Can I watch the game? Well, I haven't watched any of it. And sort of the buzz has gone. It's sort of normal life. And I don't want normal life. I want to be living that absolute buzz for 5-6 weeks, which you do. And another example of that, 2007, I went to China. It was one of the best experiences of my life to do the Women's World Cup. We were trailblazers at the time, BBC Sport. We really, really pushed it. And we got 1 million on a Saturday lunchtime for England-USA in the quarterfinals. And that sounds like child's play now, that, to be honest, because, but it's because of that. We were there doing it. And I was in that bubble so much that you'd ring home or ring your mates or ask, or even ring the sports department at the BBC. And because it wasn't, the Premier League season was going on at the same time, there wasn't the interest that we had. And it was kind of deflating. Sort of like, oh, I didn't see it, I'm afraid. What do you mean you didn't see it? What do you mean? This is my life for 6 weeks and you're not interested? For goodness sake. So the tournaments are the best thing. They are the best thing. They really are. And I've got just so many One day I'll write a book. The working title has Never Been to Bournemouth, which I intend to keep it that way.
Hey,
They keep
I'm from Bournemouth.
Sorry. I've never been as a visitor. I've never been to the football ground. I hope they go down. No, I don't. I understand. I don't. That's only purely selfish, but it ruins the title of my book otherwise. I keep resisting it when the rota comes out. I say, it's not very cost effective sending me to Bournemouth, is it? No. I'll go to Manchester again. It's fine. So yeah, I've got a lot, and a lot of the stories will be around World Cups and things. Martin Keown's behaviour and antics. Martin's dietary requirements. Yeah, there's a lot. And things I can't say in a book as well.
I'm intrigued now. I want to read this book. One more from me before we open it up to the audience. A different stadium, and obviously one of the big sort of like draws when you're a journalist and you're covering games is how they treat the press. What's the best stadium, the best club you've been to for press food?
We have a little league table in our heads that changes week to week. Manchester City were top for many years. Chelsea went top. Chelsea's magnificent. I want to take my wife there for our anniversary. just to the press room for the food. They've dipped. They've lost their form a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Spurs have come up. Arsenal's consistent. Newcastle's never been great. I'm trying to think who's top. I went somewhere the other week and thought, hang on a minute. Unexpected. Who was it? Fulham.
Really?
Fulham was excellent, yeah. They did a curry, and then they did a bread and butter pudding. And for some reason, the lady serving it took pity on me and gave me 2 helpings. The only criticism was it was cream, not custard, which never mind. So Fulham at the moment are my favourite, but it does vary. Some you don't get a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Luton yesterday was a bit salty. But no, we get fed, and we get looked after. Some you do, some you don't. Depending on who's in charge of the media side of things at clubs, you do get a difference in who knows what they're doing and who doesn't. I've got to say, Manchester City are there's such a slick operation with what they do that the way they look after media is exceptional. Yeah. They know what they're doing at every level. And I've got to be honest, just at the moment, United not so much right now. I think it sums up as well what you see off the field. They're not quite as slick. They have a great team now in place who will, I'm sure, get it better.
Yeah.
But for a few years, it's not quite as... And I wonder if that's a byproduct of being that successful. Didn't need friends.
Yeah.
Well, they do now.
Right, let's open it up to you guys. Grab the 1, 2. Okay, who's got Alex right at the top there, and then I'll come over to Sam. Okay.
Hi. I wanted to ask about EAFC 24. You lent your voice to that. How was that process?
They owned me.
What was that process like?
Painful. Quite honestly. Got to be honest. I've yet to get my head around it. I'm sure it'll feel rewarding in time. But at the moment, it's a heck of a lot of work. I mean, and that is another one that's never ending. 5-hour voice sessions, which does take its toll. In a room, you're not looking at anything. You're in a little booth, headphones on. They will, for example, so if I can give you an example, I'll have a line. They'll say, look, Team A is attacking. They've just crossed the halfway line. We don't know yet if it's going to lead to anything, but it might be a promising attack. You might say something like, and I will have an example line. Promising looking attack. What can they do from here? And then they'll say, right, we need 30 different ways of saying that. Right, okay. Then you try to think of 30 different ways of saying that. You get to about 10. You're not looking at anything, so you've got nothing for inspiration. You try and envisage it in your mind. It's not commentary. I don't know what it is. It's not acting either. I don't know what it is, actually. And I'm still getting my head around it. I'm sure I will grow to love it in time. They've very kindly asked me back next year, so we'll be adding a bit more. In fact, my first session for FC25 is next Tuesday. So we're on it. We're on it straight away. We've only just finished the last one, and we're on it. And that'll all be added to the game with patches and what have you. But the thing is, you then think of a way of saying it that you're really happy with. You think, oh, that's a good line. And the producer will say, no. And you'll think, well, that's the best one. They'll say, it's too niche. It stands out too much. It will get on people's nerves when they hear it over and over again. So you've got to think of 30 bland ways of saying the same phrase. And yeah, I have to say, I have found it really, really difficult. I would go so far as to say it's the most difficult thing I've ever done because it's not what I do. It's again, a bit like radio TV. It's a totally different job. And I've yet to evaluate whether I'm properly cut out for it. We will have arguments over the next year because I dread going in to do it. And I thought I'd love it when the game came out. I haven't played it yet, I've got to be honest. I don't think I can quite cope with my own voice on it. I'll see. I'll get there. But please bear with it because it's a very alien situation for me, and I will get there. But I've played it all my life, so I should be used to it. But it's just weird. I never realised the amount of work that goes into it. It is phenomenal. How they do it is just mind-blowing to me. How it's put together is so clever. I suspect we'll all get taken over by AI, but there we are.
Hey, Guy. Well, firstly, massive fan. And you obviously mentioned about World Cup and Euros, and I do have a question regarding that. What has been your highlight of commentating at a World Cup Euros, like maybe a game that stood out or a moment?
The game was the final last year. I mean, that'll change in time. I'll hope there'll be a better one. The standout moment hasn't happened yet. Might happen in Berlin next July. There's only one thing I want to happen, so that's it might do. It might do. Harry Kane hat-trick, thank you very much. I'll retire. Done. Just don't mess it up. That's the idea. So the stand-up moment hasn't happened yet. England winning something would be it. I once had a thought, as we went into the Maracanã in 2014, which I know England were out of and rubbish, I actually said to my colleague, I just said, we were there about 5 hours before kickoff, and I just had a little sort of overwhelming. I said, you know what, if England ever get to one of these, I don't think I can do it. I think I'll be a gibbering wreck. I'll be crying at the start, I'll be crying in the middle, I'll be crying at the end. I just don't think I can cope with it. That's the only time I become a fan is when I'm doing England games. And I try not to, I do try not to, but I think it's allowed to a certain degree because most people, I know not everybody's an England fan, obviously, but most people watching it back in this country, you know, are thinking the same things, and they're in the pubs and the beer's flying everywhere. I'd like to split myself at a World Cup and be here and experience that as well, because that looks a lot of fun. And we don't have that when we're away, but I'd rather be where I am, maybe. But yeah, England doing something would be a big highlight. The World Cup final last year was a big highlight. Funnily enough, the two best World Cup games I've ever done have both been France-Argentina, because the one in Russia 4 years before between them was another one that was absolutely magnificent. Seeing these guys, seeing Messi in the flesh, seeing Mbappe, it's an absolute thrill, and you do pinch yourself. I can say a low light, England getting beaten by Iceland. I've never felt so crap after a game in my life. Just wanted to go home. Just wanted to go home with them. It was just awful. Ugh.
Hello, Guy. I know you've worked with some serious footballers in the past, and Gary Neville. So I was wondering if you could give us your absolute dream top 4 commentary lineup.
Oh, blimey. Top 4?
I gave you 4 because you've got to include yourself, obviously.
Oh, no. Well, is that me and a co-com?
Yeah.
I can't. I'm lucky enough to have got on with everybody I've worked with, honestly. And that's not making it up. My favourite ever, and honestly, and a lot of you might disagree with this, but my favourite ever that I've worked with, and he's a really good friend of mine, is Mark Lawrenson. Because Lawro is A, a great tourist, so great to be around, and B, I just thought these days, football is now so damn serious, and everybody's so that I just think a little bit of light and just put a joke in, just every now and again, even if it's a rubbish one, just lighten it a little bit. And he was great for that. And bear in mind, he's won the lot. I mean, we're all too young. I'm practically too young. He was one heck of a footballer. Blimey, he was brilliant. And he's just a great bloke. So he'd still be my number one with Lawro, but he's kind of living out his semi-retirement in Mallorca most of the time now. So I genuinely get on. They're all very different, the ones I work with at the moment now. They all bring different qualities. Some seem to appeal to the public more than others. I don't understand a lot of stick that a lot of my colleagues get. Co-commentary seems to be the area now where most of the stick seems to fly, and it is a hard job. It's a really hard job to do. But I get on with all of them. I'm just trying to think. My co-com next year for the Euros. might be my favourite. I'm not going to reveal that yet because it's not been announced yet. We'll see. We'll see. I've worked with him before a few times. Anyway, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But yeah, they're all different. They all had their own qualities. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. My favourite commentator that does my job. Oh God. I'd say growing up it would probably be Clive Tilsley, actually, to be honest. And I still speak to Clive on a regular basis. And I have taken quite a bit from Clive in how he did it, how he does it, to be honest. There's a lot of lines I remember that he came out with. I don't do lines. I literally, it's what happens at the time. I never think about a line in advance, never ever. Because a bit like the EA Sports thing, as you've known by those who've played it, I'm not a very good actor. So if I've got a line to deliver, it won't be delivered very well. But if it just comes out because I've thought of it, it's a lot better.
Thank you for being here today. Really, really love your commentary.
Thank you.
I think my favourite one would be when the Middlesbrough game, when I think it was Coburn, and I saw him on Sky Sports the other day and saw your commentary as soon as he scored the other day. I'm
Is
like,
that Tottenham?
yeah, Tottenham.
Yeah.
So I saw your match of the day the other night. My dad just turned it on. I'm like, I didn't expect him to turn it on. So that was very nice. Kind of two questions. Number one is, do you get kind of one-sided and kind of biased to one team in a game? And secondly, is there sort of a word bank that you can kind of use and can't use? Because there's certain words like this, for example, you won't be able to use this stadium's just gone crazy. It'd be more, the roof's just been lifted off this stadium instead. So is there like any...
There's a lot of that. Yeah, on that second point, there is a lot of that. And it varies as well. The BBC are particularly efficient at letting us know when there's a word we can't use. At the moment, the crisis in Gaza at the moment, you have to be very careful about some of the language you would use. Obviously, the context is vastly different. We're just watching a game of football. So I don't think there'd be a great big fuss. But you just for a matter of respect, and you just think about it. Just think about the words. You know, you don't try not to say explosive. I know it's only a word and it means something completely different in football, but it can be a trigger for people. So don't. If it comes out, it comes out. But generally, you try not to use that sort of word, and you do tell yourself beforehand when things are going on in the world that are a lot more serious. Hang on, I'm not going to go into that territory. Just, you know, I mean, the chap that was just on before me, blimey, that you've got Michelin star fillet steak there, and now we've got McDonald's, because that's literally the difference in seriousness and gravity of the situations. So you've got to be careful. And as regards bias, no, genuinely not. Genuinely not. I've already touched on the England thing, where I think I'm allowed. I am English. It's as simple as that. So I can make it pretty clear who I would like to win. That doesn't mean the commentary will be delivered in biased form at all. But I mean, a lot of people used to revere and say he wasn't like this. Barry Davies, who's one of the best that there's ever been. Well, Barry, goodness me, if we came out with the things Barry came out with in the 80s and 90s, we'd probably get a bit of stick for it now. Famous hockey game at the Olympics, and a great famous line of commentary, one of the best ever. People think it was from football. It wasn't. It was from hockey during the Olympics. And Great Britain scored, and his commentary, word for word, is, well, where were the Germans? Frankly, who cares? Brilliant. And that's what people at home are thinking. He actually summed up the mood of the nation perfectly, because that's all that people were thinking. If I came out with that now, I'd get accused of all sorts. But I'd be thinking it, I would imagine. But genuinely, when a game starts, Team A against Team B, even England against whoever, genuinely, you just call in the game as it is. And it's a bit like the no. I get asked a lot about the swearing. Do you swear? I swear like a trooper with my mates, like anybody does. But there's something you just don't. It's not even a factor. You don't even have to think about it. It's autopilot. And the same with the bias thing. It's autopilot. It just doesn't happen. I did think yesterday, actually, towards the end of the game yesterday. You know, you go with the story. Luton beating Liverpool would have been the story of the Premier League so far this season, the biggest one we've had. And I thought, in my mind, I'm thinking, I think I'm sounding a little bit happy about this. I wasn't happy. I was just excited with the situation. It didn't mean I hate Liverpool. I don't. You know, it didn't mean I want this to happen. It was just, whoa, this is huge. This is huge. And so when Liverpool score, you've got to think about you hear it's almost a natural thing to go, oh, Luton's dream is dashed. Actually, it's not about that. Liverpool just equalised. It's great for them. So you've got to think, and you've got to try and maintain a balance. I support every team on the planet, apparently, and hate every team on the planet simultaneously, which is quite a unique trick. But you don't. You honestly don't think about it. It just happens. You'll hear people. I always try and tell people, there's a bloke in my local pub who's a West Ham fan. He's an absolute pain in the backside. And he why are we always on last on match? Oh, for goodness sake, here we go. And he's accused me of being biased in the past. And I've tried to explain to him, that's in your ear, and that's fine. You're a fan. You will hear what you want to hear and interpret it how you want to interpret it because of your bias. There's no problem with that. But please understand, it's yours, not the commentators. It's yours. You didn't like me. You didn't like me saying that because it's your team. But it doesn't make it any less true what I've said. It's anyway. When York City get in the Premier League, then you'll hear some proper bloody bias.
Thank you for coming today. One of my questions would be if you could commentate a foreign league, whether that's be La Liga, League One, Serie A. What league would you like to commentate?
I used to do Serie A for ITV a few years ago. We had the contract for a couple of years when I worked there. So I'll probably go back to Serie A. I've always had a bit of a fascination with Italian stuff. I love Italian football. A lot of people find it boring. I don't. I find it quite riveting. I love the tactical. I used to have a thing with Juventus. Juventus used to play back three before anybody else did in the late 90s. And it was like watching a dance. The three of them moved up together. They went back together. It was perfect defending. Caught everybody offside all the time. It was really infuriating. I loved it. It was, I think, the S-housery, they call it these days, don't they? It was anti-football. I really liked it for some reason because they were so successful at it. And yeah, Serie A, I think, would probably be where I'd go. But by the way, I wouldn't swap the Premier League for anything. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't want to watch any other league right now. No chance.
I was just going to ask, you've commentated with and without VAR. How does it affect commentary? Do you like it? Some commentators have strong opinions on it.
Do we have to? I don't like it. I don't want it. It's here. It's not going anywhere, so we have to go with it. Driving back from Luton last night, I was up and down with it. I think of it all the time. Do we? Some days I think I wish they'd get rid of it. I really hate it. And other days I think, oh, well, it's all part of the theatre. It all adds to it. So I think it should change. I think the process is deeply flawed, personally. We see basically. I've got a monitor which is what you're seeing at home on one monitor. That's what I'm seeing. On the other monitor, I have a split screens, 4 screens, split into 4. It's not very big, so it's not exactly detailed, but and I see what they're seeing in Stockley Park, what they're flicking back through, and it's a constant process. They're always flicking back and looking, and I hear what the VAR is saying. I don't hear what the referee on the field is saying. I hear what the VAR is saying. And I don't think it would help if we all heard it, by the way. I know there's a big push for it at the moment. I don't think it would help if we all heard it. I think it would cause even more confusion amongst a lot of people in the stadium. I'm not sure it would work personally. I'm not sure it works anyway. It does temper you a bit. Luton scoring yesterday was a prime example. So Luton break down the field. Liverpool think they should have had a penalty. Luton break down the other field and score. So your natural reaction is to give it the big one. You have to. But then you've got to temper it with, well, that might not be a goal. So you come down again. And it's... The first season, I think we all struggled with it. I remember talking to Martin Tyler about this, and we had a proper discussion about what do we do with this? And we came to the conclusion, I think most of us did, it's just a goal. We go for it. Because when years to come, when we're listening back to that goal, nobody wants to hear, well, it's in, but it might not count. That could be a goal that defines a season, and you can't have that on the tape forever. You know, it's in, but it might not count. It's going to sound rubbish. So we just got to go for it. Assume it's a goal, unless proven otherwise. And okay, sometimes we'll sound silly, because it's been ruled out and we've just gone to DEFCON 10. So sometimes we're going to sound silly. We've got to expect that, but it can be frustrating. I think I was all right yesterday. I was quite happy with it yesterday because I think I managed to do Luton's goal justice, and then I did say, well, in a minute, it's either going to be Luton 1, Liverpool 0, or a penalty to Liverpool. It's one or the other. And that was that was the situation. But it does temper you a bit. You maybe a notch off where you'd want to be because you are conscious that it might be ruled out in a minute. It's awkward, isn't it? I think it's awkward for everybody. But I speak to a lot of referees. Their opinion is the club's brought it on by moaning about every decision, so they brought it on themselves, and now they're moaning about this. It'll never end, will it? It'll never be right for everyone.
Hi, Guy. I'm sure you're used to it by now, but when you first started commentating and going into journalism, how was the travel? Did it ever become overwhelming? And how long did it take for you to get used to it?
It hasn't yet. It was quite easy on the M1 yesterday, so that was all right. It hasn't yet. It's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of it. And it's a bit people don't see. I'm not great spending time on my own. I hate my own company. I particularly enjoy it. I'd rather be in a room talking to people all the time. So sitting in the car on your own, sitting on the train on your own it can get a bit repetitive. But to be honest, I was thinking yesterday of going down to Luton and thinking, God, this is boring. There's nothing on the radio. I'm not a big podcast person yet. I'll get there. And I was sort of driving down, and I thought, hang on a minute. In a minute, I'm going to watch Mo Salah and all that. That's all right, isn't it? It's worth the 3.5 hours. It's always worth it. You've got to think about the end result. So the travel's always worth it. And actually, at a tournament, it's a buzz. Because at a tournament at a World Cup, how you work is, Qatar was a bit different because we could get everywhere and back quite easily, all very close. So I didn't enjoy the tournament from that aspect because we were in one place and you went back to that place every night, your hotel room on your own, and it wasn't fun. Whereas South Africa, Brazil, Russia, the distances involved, basically it's game, travel. So you'll do the game, you'll get back to your room, you'll pack up, you'll be up at 5, 6 in the morning the next day. That's if you've not travelled overnight. Off to the airport, off to the train station. That next day is a travel day, and the process repeats. And for the first 3 weeks of the tournament, it's game, travel. And you think it's exhausting. It's not. It's great fun. The adrenaline keeps you going, and it's great fun. And you have such a laugh on it. There's so many things happen in train stations and airports and things. The odd beer does help. Keeps everybody just on a level. Let's just all calm down, shall we? And we've missed the train. Never mind. There'll be another one.
Hi, Guy. Lovely to meet you. So, question that I think it was an interview with the BBC. You said you don't pre-rehearse your lines and love to take in all the action in the moment. And so, why is that so important to you?
As I've alluded to already, because I'm a crap actor. If you've got a line in your head, it'll never happen exactly as you've envisaged it. So it won't be ever quite right because you can't predetermine these things. And B, I won't deliver it right. It's commentary to me has got to be of the moment. A goal going in the 5th minute is not the same as a goal going in the 95th minute. It's a different feel. Different feel for every minute of the match, the situation of the match. So I never will. You might have buzzing around your head during a commentary, if this happens in a minute, I'll say this. But then it'll happen and you'll say something completely different. I was annoyed with the director yesterday because they had a great shot. There was a chap in the main stand at Luton who had a guide dog with him, a blind chap. And I said, I hope they cut that dog up again in a minute. Because I'm going to say, what else would you expect at Kenilworth Road? But anyway, they never did, probably for the best. But I thought that was quite good. I was quite happy with that. But no, I don't pre-rehearse lines. And the best example of that ever is the most famous commentary that's ever happened in English football in 1966. Because you're not going to know there are people on the pitch. You're not going to know how that's going to happen. You are reacting to what you see, and that's all you can do. You might have an idea, but I would never, ever. And I can tell one that's been done a mile off. I can tell one that somebody's thought of an absolute mile away. You really can. No, it's not for me.
Well, I think, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fantastic session about an amazing career so far. It's going to get even more amazing, there's no doubt, when England do win the World Cup.
Yes.
It's going to happen. But, ladies and gentlemen, please make some noise for Guy Mowbray!
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much to Guy. Okay, we're breaking for lunch now, so back here for 2 o'clock. Make sure you get your seats early.